Hello again, everyone. Edwin Learnard back once again. In this YouTube astrological segment, I'm going to be giving you the natal chart analysis of Bill Nye. Actually, it's going to be a solar sunrise chart because his time, of course, is unavailable, birth time. Now, with the sun in Sagittarius, this could give a very as far as his basic character goes, his inner character, very expansive, philosophical, jocular, and jovial nature. He could be the perpetual, voracious learner. Now, excuse me. The moon is either in Aries or Taurus, depending on birth time. Now, I am leaning with the Taurus moon. The Taurus moon can be, if he does indeed have this, can be why he could be rather stubborn, obstinate, and intransigent regarding his Sagittarius philosophies and opinions. Now, the moon in Taurus, if this is the case, if he has this, the emotional needs can be tied into things of an earthy nature, and it could be play a role in his affinity for things that are geological. I mean, he does talk about the Earth's wobble in an attempt to debunk astrology. Proficient in earth science, and he talks about the Earth's crust. I believe it was at least in one video. So he obviously is very knowledgeable about things that are pertaining to the Earth. Now, the thing about this is, as far as geology goes, now, in his solar sunrise chart, he has 6 of his 10 planets on the left side of the chart, which emphasizing more self-reliance and independence as opposed to doing things collaboratively with others. This could be something where he doesn't necessarily need cajoling to get things started or being coaxed by others. Now, he also, in the solar sunrise chart, he has 7 of the 10 planets on the top half of the chart. This suggests a more gregarious, being more gregarious and extroverted as opposed to being introverted, more objective than subjective, and being more optimistic as opposed to being pessimistic. He has very strong Sagittarius energy, so this obviously accentuates that as well, being very expansive and optimistic and seeing that glass half full as opposed to really half empty, so to speak. This also could indicate he could be more inclined toward a public life as opposed to a private one. Now, he has most of his planets in this chart in the 4th quadrant. Now, this could show much emphasis on humanitarian things, a person that has strong global and environmental interests and doing things more on a worldly, global scale, and perhaps receiving notoriety, status, and recognition for it. The thing about this, too, is he has the majority of the major astrological influences in mutable signs. And when I'm talking about major astro influences, at least for me, from my perspective, everyone might see this differently. I'm talking about the 10 planets, and I'm referring to the midheaven and the ascendant. Of course, the ascendant is the same as the sun sign in a solar sunrise chart. Now, anyway, having all this energy and mutable signs, this could give a very strong emphasis on pliability and adaptability. He is very likely to make more compromises make most of the compromises in relationships, and could also likely be very adaptable in adverse circumstances, make the most of adverse conditions and circumstances. Now, but at the same time, having this preponderance of energy in mutable signs could also give certain restlessness and changeability, and could be rather fickle as well, and mercurial. Now, anyway, he has most of his major astrological influences in fire signs as well. So this could give much leadership prowess and ability, a lot of exuberance, enthusiasm, and perhaps that firepower as well. Could also give a very exceptional fiery temperament. Now, also perhaps a lot of courage and fortitude and outspokenness. At the same time, this could give very strong disputatious and argumentative tendencies. Now, the final or chart signature is in Sagittarius as well. Now, the chart signature in astrology is supposed to give an overall feel or tone to the chart. However, I don't think this supersedes the sun, moon, or ascendant in its significance or impact on a person astrologically. Now, In this case, I believe it could accentuate the Sun in Sagittarius energy, perhaps accentuating and increasing very expansive, jovial, philosophical qualities, and one that emphasizes strongly the veritable truth and being that voracious learner, and really, and also having that kind of that what me worry outlook. So now, delving into his chart more now, the thing I noticed, one thing that stood out to me, is that he has the singleton planet Saturn in Scorpio. Now, this could make this emphasize and stand out a little bit more. Of course, this could give very strong proclivity for mechanics. I believe he has like a degree in mechanical engineering. He also, when I look at this again, it's more emphasis on the placement, but at the same time, this could also manifest, and it also falls in the 12th house in the solar sunrise chart. This could also manifest perhaps in some restriction or limitation as far as occult supernatural subjects go, which could include astrology, but it could also put this very strong emphasis on responsibility to obliterate things of a spiritual and metaphysical nature, or at least try to debunk it. Now, and of course, astrology, as many of you may know, he has vehemently voiced criticism of it and in an attempt to debunk it. Now, also, too, I think is interesting about this, and given Saturn, talking about his Saturn in Scorpio, again, in the 12th house, this could also be, given it's in the 12th house, this could be very, where he could be very proficient in chemistry as well, because the 12th house, of course, corresponds with Pisces, and doing so with a lot of research and probing, perhaps, given that this is Saturn in Scorpio. Now, also, too, the Saturn in Scorpio falls in a stellium that includes Mercury and the Sun. Now, what starts out with that Saturn, Saturn in Scorpio is the first planet in this series of conjunctions. Saturn in Scorpio, what starts out with that Saturn Scorpio energy is that laborious, deep research, perhaps, which ultimately leads him to shine, which of course is the Sun in Sagittarius, which is that last planet in that series of conjunctions. Now, anyway, the next thing also, and Saturn in Scorpio can sometimes be averse to exploring things on a deeper level, but I think the way it might manifest with him is that he might pick and choose what he's actually exploring on a deep level. It's certainly not astrology, that's for sure. And falling in the 12th house of the metaphysical, I could understand how that factors in. So anyway. Now, also, Saturn in the 12th could fear the unknown, and in maybe this case, the metaphysical as well, which could include astrology. Now, he also has Mercury in its detriment in Sagittarius, and also in its accidental detriment, given in this chart, falling in the 12th. It's in its accidental detriment in falling in the 12th house. Now, Mercury in Sagittarius can have an anathema to the details of something and going from point A to C, so to speak, without going to point B. Now, in the fact Mercury also conjunct Saturn could give that restriction and limitation in thinking and perhaps the philosophical outlook, given that this is in the zodiac sign Sagittarius. Now, however, the Sun being in close proximity to these points can shine the light on this, so to speak. Now, one of his rulers, given the limitation in his thinking, I think a little bit, what could play a role of this is one of the rulers of the 3rd house falls in the 12th house of restrictions. Now, it's interesting. In a video, he talks about, I guess you could say, like the tearing down of Noah's Ark from a figurative standpoint, I guess debunking it. The theory on that and the idea of Noah's Ark. Now, the thing about it is, what's interesting is that he has Pluto conjunct Jupiter, which could be about obliterating things connected with religion and things of a philosophical nature. He also has this conjunction in the 9th house of philosophy. And the thing about this is, And also the ninth house is religion again. Now the thing too is on astro.com there was someone that speculated, I believe through like maybe perhaps rectification process of the chart, that Nye has Aquarius rising. Now if he does indeed have an Aquarius ascendant, this would likely oppose either his natal Uranus or natal Pluto, and that could be an indicator as to part of the reason why he's so adversarial to astrology, and actually maybe even diametrically opposed to it. Now Uranus is associated with astrology, and Pluto I believe can be as well, because Pluto is associated with the occult, supernatural, and could include astrology. The ruler of the first house in this chart falls in the ninth house. It could show a lot of his energy is being injected into global matters, which could include global communications. Now, in that conjunction of Pluto might actually give power to this as well. Now, he also in his chart, he has a T-square that involves Uranus and Leo in the 8th house. And it opposes Chiron and Aquarius in the 2nd house, and being squared, which is the focal point, that Mars, Neptune, Libra conjunction in the 11th house in the solar/sunrise chart. Now, one way this can manifest with him, perhaps, this could be a pull between involving wounds connected maybe with some form of ostracism, friendships, and that exasperation for sense of not belonging, which could affect the self-worth, given this it's in the 2nd house, opposing, now I'm talking about Uranus in the 8th, opposing rebellion against deep connections. And so this is really where things could, where he could really be feeling a tough opposition with this. Now, the focal point, Mars conjunct Neptune in the 11th house, could show that balancing that energy of intellectual sociability, this Mars in Libra, through television, which could be Neptune, and tied in through making acquaintances, which of course is the 11th house, and aspirations and goals, which is the 11th as well. Now, another way I see this opposition now between Chiron and Aquarius and Uranus in Leo in the 8th could manifest is that this could be the Chiron and Aquarius could reflect perhaps difficulties in progressive thinking, and maybe could play a role in why he could be so intransigent about certain things and not wanting to go outside the box in certain areas. And opposing the Uranus in the 8th house could be oppositions from internet astrologers, because you think Uranus could be connected with the internet, I believe, and then the 8th house could be associated with the occult and supernatural and can include astrology. Now, again, we go to the point of overemphasis, accentuation, the point of overcompensation, which is the focal point in the T-square, which should be again the Mars Neptune conjunction in Libra in the 11th house. Now, this could be where this point of overemphasis, overcompensation to deal with this opposition could be perhaps to maybe when I look about this energy, perhaps put into things of a deceptive nature to some degree, that Mars conjunct Neptune, and doing so with a little bit of a little charming influence. If you look at the Bill Nye and astrology video, you'll see what I'm talking about at the end of the video. And given the 11th house can be associated with astrology, that's where that energy, that deceptive energy can come in. Now, and the reason I call it deceptive energy is because I think what he does is he may deliberately be glossing over certain details, which could be Neptune energy as well, in an attempt to debunk and refute astrology, because if he was actually including more details associated with it, such as talking about the precession of equinoxes and maybe other things associated with it, which might help validate it as opposed to rebuking it or refuting it or what have you, that could actually corroborate the existence maybe to some, as opposed to debunking it. So that is basically what I'm getting at. So anyway, people, that'll conclude this YouTube astrological segment for the natal chart of Bill Nye. And stay tuned next time, where I'm going to be talking about 29 degrees Capricorn. Two things I want to get with you on before I head out. Firstly, the stars may impel but do not compel. And secondly, never isolate any single astrological element, aspect, planetary placement, position, configuration, influence, or what have you, and make an analysis of a person, astrologically speaking, based on this alone, because astrologically speaking, the person is the sum of all their components in their natal chart and not just one. Until next time, people, stay well.